Percy Jackson Season 2 released its 8th and final episode, which is entitled The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well, and this title is taken directly from the last chapter of the Sea of Monsters book. In this video, I'll be doing a breakdown of this episode, along with its mid-credit and post-credit scenes. If you want to catch up on not just my reviews, but also the PGO Season 2 episodes, you can check out my reviews playlist, which is linked down below. And since this is the finale of the season, spoilers will be inevitable. And with that, let's get into it. This episode starts with a flashback we saw in episode 4, and we also saw glimpses of this in the previous episode. And I'm talking about the scene with Thalia, Luke, Grover, and Annabeth on the way to Camp Half-Blood. This episode highlighted this moment a lot, to the point that they even dropped a freaking bombshell by the end, and I want to talk about it in this part of the video. The premise pretty much stays the same to what we know in the book. Thalia, Luke, Grover, and Annabeth are on the way to camp before they suddenly got surrounded by monsters sent by the god of the underworld Hades. In the show, these monsters were specifically the Furies, or creatures who are loyal to Hades, but this was kind of different in the book. In the book, the Furies weren't explicitly the ones who attacked Thalia and the rest, and instead, it was a bigger horde of monsters from the underworld. I mentioned in my episode 4 review that I wish that they showed more monsters, because from what we know in the books, Thalia fought monster after monster just to save her friends. But little did I know that there was actually a reason for the show, well, showing just the Furies. And I'll get into that in a bit. In this new episode, we see Thalia make the incredibly noble choice of sacrificing herself for her friends, and she tells Luke to bring Annabeth to Camp Half-Blood no matter what. This emphasis on Annabeth is noteworthy, because the show kind of complicated Annabeth and Thalia's relationship. In episode 5 of season 1, Annabeth mentions something interesting about her relationship with Thalia. There, she tells Percy about her story of how she ran away with Luke and Thalia, but also highlights how Thalia made her earn it before joining the group. I always find this interesting, especially when you connect it to what we learned in season 2 now. In season 2 episode 4, we see Annabeth explain why she doesn't like Cyclopses, and how in the show version, she actually got kidnapped by Cyclopses and Thalia had to save her. After this incident, show Annabeth said that Thalia made the deadly decision of choosing to go to Camp Half-Blood because Thalia was convinced that Annabeth needed the safety and security Camp Half-Blood promised. I honestly find this really interesting, because based on her actions, Thalia seems to be open and caring for Annabeth, while Annabeth in season 1 makes it seem like Thalia was cold to her. And thinking about it now, this difference does add up, and let me explain. In episode 4 of season 2, Annabeth pretty much hints on the idea that she partly blames herself for what happened to Thalia. Annabeth thinks to herself that if she hadn't been kidnapped by Cyclopses, Thalia wouldn't have made a decision to bring themselves to Camp Half-Blood, and therefore wouldn't have been turned into the tree she is today. Annabeth even mentions that it wasn't the first time she messed up in their journey together. So, in the 2 months she spent with Thalia and Luke, Thalia may have been cold to Annabeth at the start, especially since Annabeth may have been another mouth to feed for Thalia, which is why Annabeth told Percy in season 1 that Thalia made her earn it, or earn Thalia's trust. But in the end, as seen in this new episode, she still grew to care and protect Annabeth, which is why she emphasized Annabeth's safety here to Luke. Also, I can imagine that this moment would have added more salt to the wound for Annabeth, because Thalia was thinking of Annabeth's safety just moments away before she got turned to a pine tree. And after Thalia said so, she went on to face the Furies. It's a powerful moment, and honestly, I've been loving Thalia's character in the show so far. I'm honestly very excited to see what they do with her character in the next season, which, surprising news, it's set to come out this year as well. So I'm honestly so ready. But anyway, going back to the flashback, we got an incredible bombshell about this entire scene. Luke, Grover, and Annabeth weren't able to see what really happened, but apparently Chiron did. Chiron explained what really happened to Thalia, and this part was very different in the books. So let's talk about the book version first. In the books, it's established that Thalia sacrificed herself to save her friends, and before dying, Zeus turned her into a pine tree so that her soul wouldn't go to Hades. This story was established since the first season of the show as well, with Annabeth even telling Percy that Thalia met a hero's fate, to which Percy, being Percy, told Annabeth that Thalia met a pinecone's fate.
She met a pinecone's fate.
And that's honestly hilarious, but actually true. But given this, let's head to the bombshell version. In the show, Chiron explained that he witnessed Thalia go to the Furies, and instead of attacking her, the Furies actually talked instead. They had a message from Hades, and they told Thalia that Zeus wanted to use her as a weapon in the Great Prophecy. Now, this is not in the books at all, But honestly, that's an incredibly cool idea that aligns well with Zeus. But at the same time, it also creates a bit of a domino effect. And let me explain. In the books, Hades sent the monsters after Thalia because Zeus killed his mortal lover Maria D'Angelo. And yes, Maria D'Angelo, or the mother of the siblings Nico and Bianca D'Angelo, who are demigods we'll meet in the next season. Because of her death, Hades swore to get revenge on Zeus, and he took this out on Thalia. However, the show changed this up completely by editing Hades into this pretty chill dude. Like, seriously, they wrote Hades into this pretty chill guy who just wanted his own peace and quiet, and to get back his Helm of Darkness. And this is actually very different in the books. In the books, Hades is portrayed as sad and tired of his life because there were many problems in the underworld, and he can be vengeful because he did want to kill Thalia. But because the show is going for a more calm-headed Hades, they decided to remove his plan of killing Thalia, and instead, they made him warn her of the Great Prophecy, or the prophecy that tells of a demigod child of the Big Three, or Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, who would one day turn 16 and make a decision that would either destroy or save Olympus. Learning about this idea from the Furies, Thalia got mad at Zeus, and as if on cue, Zeus appeared to her. In Season 2, Zeus is played by Courtney B. Vance, and he actually replaced the original actor for Zeus in Season 1. Previously, Zeus was played by Lance Reddick, and he was incredible in his role as Zeus. For me, he truly encapsulated the power and personality Zeus had in the books, but he sadly passed away in 2023. Because of this, a lot of fans like me were curious as to who would play Zeus in the next seasons to come, especially since whoever will do that has some pretty big shoes to fill for Lance Reddick. And with this, there were a lot of high expectations for Courtney B. Vance, and I have to say, he lived up to the hype. He didn't have much screen time in this season, but he also had a similar power and presence that Lance Reddick had in Season 1. So honestly, to me, he was a great choice to replace another great actor. In this scene with Zeus and Thalia, Zeus tells Thalia that she should go to Camp Half-Blood, but Thalia disagrees. Thalia declared that she won't be his weapon, and as she said this, Zeus got mad, and that's what made him turn her into a pine tree. Comparing this moment to the book, this is an incredibly big change. In the book, Thalia being a pine tree was an act of kindness on Zeus's part, but in the show, it's the complete opposite. And it actually adds up pretty well with how Luke described the pine tree in Season 2, Episode 3. There, Luke had said that the tree was Thalia's curse.
That tree is her curse. She'd be glad to see it fall.
This is a detail that I never expected, but seeing that it was a punishment from Zeus now in the show, it makes the audience actually sympathize with Luke more. He lost his best friend to a curse, and that's just tragic. Honestly, it's such a huge change that I don't know how to process it yet. I like how they handled the flashback, but I think it's going to take me a while to get used to how they edited Zeus's character here. Actually, this change right here reminds me of something I talked about in my previous video, where I tier ranked Riordan versus theories. From that, a theory I tackled was an idea that Zeus didn't make Thalia into a pine tree, but Mr. D did. This is because some fans think that it's out of character for Zeus to spare a demigod, especially when Zeus literally blasted the hotel where Nico, Bianca, and Maria D'Angelo were. Zeus didn't seem to care that the blast could have killed Nico and Bianca, mainly because they were dangerous demigods who could be the demigod of the prophecy. But at the same time, Thalia is also a dangerous demigod. Why did he spare Thalia when he was ready to kill Nico and Bianca? It could be because Thalia is his daughter, so maybe in some way he does actually care about her. But with this idea, the showrunners seem to think that Zeus shouldn't be feeling pity or sadness for his daughter. Instead, they made him quite ruthless if you ask me. And to not deviate too much from the book, they decided to keep the fact that Zeus turned Thalia into a pine tree, but in a completely different tone. It may be a big shift, but I actually really like this idea. It really shows Zeus's ruthless side, because honestly, he can be really brutal. And now, let's get to the main plot of the episode. We see Percy and the rest in Sally's car going to Camp Half-Blood, and this is actually where we left them in the previous episode. Just a side note that I saw people mention online, this car is actually a Toyota Prius, and it's also Paul Blofus's car. Paul is an English teacher, and he actually starts dating Sally Jackson in the next book, or The Titan's Curse. And eventually, the two married and had a daughter named Estelle Jackson Blofus, who is now Percy's stepsister. And what's pretty funny about this car is that there's a sticker over here that says, "I'd rather be teaching." And it clearly hints on Paul being an English teacher. Given this, I think we may meet Paul in the next season, but until now, we don't really have any announcement on his casting. Interestingly, a lot of people previously wanted Rick to be Paul in the show because it would be a cool cameo, but so far, there's nothing yet. So anyway, we also get a pretty sweet scene with Percy and Sally when they arrive in Camp Haplin. Sally tells Percy that she'll be right there with them, but Percy disagrees and tells her to stay there and away from danger. Percy then points out how this was exactly the same place where he almost lost her to the Minotaur, and it actually gave me chills because he's actually very right. Percy almost lost her here, and his personal loyalty is showing through again because he wants to protect her first before himself. Interestingly, Percy also mentions the drachma dream that Sally talked about in episode 1. There, Sally told Percy that she saw a drachma with a trident on one side and a scythe on the other. I previously interpreted this as Luke and Percy being similar enough to be the same coin, but they're on different sides of the story, with Percy being the trident and Luke being the scythe. However, Percy seemed to interpret it in a different image. He tells Sally that the trident was himself, but that the scythe may be Thalia. This idea has been mentioned time and time again in the season, especially in the previous episode, because Annabeth deduces that they could use the fleece to bring Thalia back to life. And because Thalia is a forbidden child of the Big Three, there is a big possibility that she could be the demigod of the prophecy and side with Kronos. This is especially evident in this new episode, as Percy points out to Annabeth that Thalia was best friends with both Annabeth and Luke. If Thalia came back, she would have to pick between the two of them, which is absolutely painful. Percy is also wary of Thalia, mainly because of the dreams he had from Kronos. There was a big possibility that Thalia would join Luke, because they knew each other longer compared to Thalia and Annabeth, so I really like this concept. And now, I want to talk about Clarisse's role in this episode. The Sea of Monsters touched upon Clarisse's character quite a bit, but it was nothing like the content we got in this season. We got even more depth with Clarisse in the show, and that's one of the things I love the most about this season. In this episode, we realized that Clarisse wasn't immediately able to get to camp because of the different monster attacks, and Luke and his army were arriving. We see Clarisse with the fleece running to camp, and we meet a girl named Katie. When her name was first said on screen, I immediately paused the video because she could be Katie Gardner, or the head counselor of the Demeter cabin. However, when I searched her character up, I realized that she's a completely new character named Katie Yoon. So, I guess that's just that. That would also explain the bow and arrows that she uses in this scene, because that would mean that she was a daughter of Apollo, the god of archery. In the book, Katie Gardner wouldn't have used the bow and arrow because she's a daughter of Demeter, or the harvesting goddess. And speaking of campers, I also saw a pretty book accurate Kyla Knowles from the Trials of Apollo series. She's a daughter of Apollo, and she was known to have green highlights in her hair, and she was an archer. And as seen in this shot with this camper, she has arrows as well on her back. I absolutely love seeing details like this in the show, but I also think it's a bit too early to include Kyla if this really is Kyla. We meet Kyla in the Trials of Apollo series, or the most recent Riordan series timeline-wise, so I'm really surprised that they actually included a cameo of her here. And speaking of Camp Haplet itself, the camp looked completely wrecked, and it's because of the many monster attacks. These attacks have been happening because the protection barrier around Camp Haplet was weakening thanks to Luke poisoning Thalia's tree. Going back to Clarisse though, Clarisse runs around Camp Haplet to meet Chris Rodriguez, a demigod son of Hermes or Luke's half-brother. We first met Chris this season in episode 2, and it surprised a lot of fans like me because in the Sea of Monsters book, Chris was already with Luke in the Princess Andromeda. Chris sided with Kronos, and I wasn't sure how they would handle it in the show. And seeing Chris's moments over here in episode 8, I had to say, they did not disappoint. Chris and Clarisse talked before Chris revealed that there were spies in Camp Haplet for Kronos, and this is actually a running idea in the series as well. Luke charmed demigods in camp, and they gave him information, which is why Luke's almost always up to date with whatever is happening in Camp Haplet. As Chris talks, Clarisse soon deduced that Chris and these demigods had turned against Camp Haplet and joined Kronos. And then, Chris and the rest turn on Clarisse and attack her. This was insane, and this must have hurt Clarisse a lot. We know in the books that she actually had a crush on Chris, so actually witnessing him physically hurt and betray her must have been brutal for Clarisse. Chris and the demigods try to get the fleece from Clarisse, but in comes Annabeth and Grover to save her. Alongside this, we also get a pretty cool look of the battle. It's intense as Luke's army attacks the campers, and it's honestly a really exciting moment that I've been waiting for all season. Like, we've seen so many teasers of this battle, so it's pretty satisfying to actually see it now. As Grover, Clarisse, and Annabeth rode on the chariot, Annabeth suddenly got shot by an arrow from Allison Sims. In my previous video, I mentioned how Allison seems to be a foil character or a person made to be an opposite for another character, and Allison is a foil to Annabeth. This is because throughout the season, Allison seems to be encouraging the darker side of Luke, while Annabeth is Luke's voice of reason and humanity. And honestly, I really like this theme. Allison fought in the battle, and the fact that she was the one who hit Annabeth may be a figurative way of how Allison is Annabeth's direct counterpart in Luke's army. Also, the fact that the arrow shot Annabeth's shoulder specifically is interesting because it reminded me of a particular scene in The Last Olympian. There, Annabeth was also hit on the shoulder with an arrow, but it was poisonous and about to hit Percy. So, this is a pretty cool parallel that I think other Riordanverse fans would have seen as well, especially since after Annabeth got hit in that book, Percy said, "No one touches her." And we've heard Percy say this in episode 6 of season 2. Percy told Luke not to touch Annabeth when Annabeth was dying. So, they're really giving parallels to The Last Olympian already. After this, we see Luke and Percy also have an intense sword fight, to the point that Percy started bleeding. Luke was about to kill Percy then and there, but Trident blocked Luke just in time. For a second, I actually thought it was Poseidon, but then Tyson came in. Tyson then threw Luke back, and this scene eventually led up to Percy throwing Clarisse the fleece, and Clarisse shooting the fleece into the tree. The tree then exploded with lightning, and Thalia jumped out and said, "Never!" And that was exactly what she would have told her father before getting turned into a pine tree. And then, we get an interesting moment with Poseidon. Poseidon enters a dream with Percy, and they share a pretty sweet moment. Personally, the highlight here is when Tyson appeared in the dream as well, and I'm not joking when I say that I actually got teary-eyed seeing Tyson teary-eyed. He tells Percy that while living in the streets, he prayed to Poseidon for a friend, and Poseidon gave Tyson even more than that. Poseidon gave Percy, who is now a brother to Tyson, which meant the world to Tyson because he never had a real family or home before Percy, and it's honestly such a sweet moment. After this scene, we see Percy wake up, and then we meet Chiron. Chiron has been reinstated as camp activities coordinator after what happened to Tantalus. And now, I realized that I completely forgot to go over this earlier, so let me explain. In this episode, Tantalus tells the campers to stop whining about the monster attacks because they needed to work on the chariot race. Chris argued against this, but Tantalus wasn't listening. At one point, Tantalus suddenly tried grabbing for food, and for those of you who don't know or forgot, Tantalus' punishment is that he would never be able to reach for food no matter how hard he tries, so I expected the same result. However, Tantalus actually managed to grab a chicken leg, and this actually confused me. Tantalus' punishment from Zeus is supposed to last forever, so I'm not really sure how this scene was even possible. So let me know in the comments on what you guys think. As Tantalus realized that his curse was kind of lifted, a fireball came flying into his face, and Tantalus actually died in the show. And this never really happened in the book. In the book, he was just sent back to Tartarus to suffer for another eternity, so this really surprised me. But I guess it still has the same end result. If Tantalus died, he would have went to Tartarus either way, so it really doesn't matter. However, I was surprised that it didn't exactly explain how Chiron got his job back. In the book, we got a scene of Luke admitting to poisoning Thalia's tree, and he said this in an iris message, and Percy and Annabeth were able to record this. This was evidence enough to prove that Chiron didn't poison the tree, and that's why Chiron got his job back. The show completely brushed it off though, so I decided to point that out to give more info on that. The episode ends with an absolutely epic cliffhanger. Thalia wakes up, and it parallels the entire scene of Kronos barging in the doors as Thalia and Percy's nightmare. And speaking of nightmares, Percy said the first line he said this season.
You guys get nightmares, right? Not like mine. Because mine just woke up.
And the season ends there. This was a phenomenal episode to me. I'm rating it a 10 out of 10. And now, let's go to the mid and post-credit scenes that we got in this episode. The mid-credit scene actually teased Season 3 in a very small but incredible teaser. We see Percy and Annabeth on the dance floor, and they kind of stand there awkwardly before Annabeth takes Percy's hand and guides him to hold her. This moment is referring to a scene from the third book of PJO or the Titan's Curse, specifically in a moment in Westover Hall. Westover Hall is a military school, and Percy and Annabeth were there with Grover and Thalia undercover. There was a school dance that day, and to blend in, Percy and Annabeth thought of dancing together. When the idea was brought up, Percy actually looked around the room to look for a girl to ask, and he actually asked Annabeth, "Who should I pick?" Annabeth replied, "Me, Seaweed Brain," and that made Percy and Annabeth start dancing. We don't really hear this dialogue in this moment, but we do see Annabeth be the one to pull Percy to the dance floor, because in the book, Annabeth was the one who made him dance as well. We also see Percy look pretty awkward about it, and this is honestly one of the sweetest Perciveth moments we get in the books, and I'm so excited to see more of this. The last scene we get is the post-credit scene in Cersei's Island. We see Cersei, and she presented the statues of Percy and Annabeth. This is because Percy and Annabeth were able to get past the sirens, and their story will now be used to trick people into getting Cersei's course. This is a clever way of showing how Cersei tricks these people into staying with her, but it also begs the question of what happened to Blackbeard, or the pirate Percy and Annabeth freed in episode 5. In the book, Blackbeard and his men had destroyed the place, and that's why Hyla hated Percy and Annabeth moving forward. So I'm not really sure why they decided to add this random scene with Cersei. I guess we have to wait and see for the next seasons to come, but so far, that's all we have for Season 2. Season 2 arrived 2 years after its first season. It was a long wait for all book fans like me, but finally getting to watch all the episodes was incredibly satisfying. This series was amazing, and honestly a huge upgrade to Season 1 for me. I'm very excited for Season 3, and the fact that it's premiering this year makes me even more eager to watch more of the show. So how about you? What do you think of this finale? Let me know in the comments down below.